Ashton. Hello. Hi, hello, welcome to Criminology 101, Lesson 2. My name is Maja. If you are here for the first time, I started this series, Criminology 101. I've done Masters in Criminology and Criminal Psychology. So this part actually might only be taught to the people that have done the psychology bit of it. Although I'm pretty sure it should be mentioned if you have done criminology only. But then again, I can only speak to my own degree. This is probably one of the most interesting topics that I have done during this degree. So obviously I'm starting from the most interesting ones and then I'll go on to like the theories and other stuff that I need to read like tons about. So, super recognizers. What is this all about? So what are super recognizers all about? As you probably guess from the name, they recognize things pretty well. What do they recognize? What's the missing word? Faces. So let's say you watching this, yeah, you, particularly you, don't turn around. You are a criminal, right? You have done something bad, like everybody's chasing you, the police is after you, but you're like really good at escaping. However, you are continuing with your life, you're taking YouTube, you are appearing on CCTV, because CCTV is everywhere now. So, you know, your face is still here and there. Even though you're really good at your face and disguising yourself, you can't really disguise your facial features, right? But you think you're pretty safe. You dyed your hair, you're putting like caps on, you're covering yourself with hoods, you're like, nobody's gonna get me. Wrong. As much as you're trying to hide, let's say I'm within 1 to 2% of the population that can recognize a face just by looking at it. It doesn't matter actually at what age I look at your face. Say I looked at your high school picture and now you're like 22 years old, I can probably still recognize it even though you think you have changed so much. That means if I spot your face on any of the CCTV cameras that I have the access to, because me as a super recognizer, I also most probably work for the Met Police, you're done. You are busted. We caught you, we know your patterns now, we learn where you live, that's it, you're done. Don't commit crime, that was the lesson. Now let's snap out of this imaginary world and actually talk about super recognizers. Because if you're watching this, you and I are probably within like 98% of the population who can only remember 20% of the faces you've seen. Like with me, sometimes I see somebody from high school, I'm like, that might or might not be that person. I've known them when they were grown. But if you were to have these skills and you were a super recognizer, you actually can successfully recognize about 80% of the faces you see. That's insane. That's some insane skills. If your first thought is, how have I never heard about this? It's not a pretty new term, but kind of still is. It was coined actually in 2009. Not that these people didn't exist before then, but it was only studied and researched and kind of coined in 2009 by Harvard and UCL college researchers. And obviously why this is useful, well, you could tell probably from what I was telling you, mostly super recognizers work for the Met, so they work for the police, they work in research, they work on how can we improve and actually recognize people, because as we know, CCTV can be faulty. As I was mentioning, you could be hiding your face underneath a cap and the CCTV won't spot you because they can't just move from every single angle. Some of them are still grainy. Some shops have policy to delete CCTV footage after, let's say, 30 days. So obviously this kind of skill is super useful to the police. To put it into perspective, there's this guy that I read an interview on that works for the police. His name is Andy Pope. He has actually successfully identified 1,000 suspects within 5 years. Do you know how helpful that is? And he is the one that says, like, he can see a picture of somebody, let's say in high school, and now they're like 30 years of age, and he can recognize the person. So in his case, for example, where other police officers would have to wait for a suspect to reoffend to make a request, for him, that skill is helpful because he can see somebody that he can remember if he saw your picture and now he sees you. But also is the fact that he can remember a face for a long time. So once he recognizes a suspect he has seen 2 years prior. So just imagine how useful that is. If he can have the memory of like 2 years up until now of like every face he has seen, you stand no chance. And this is obviously the human touch that's particularly useful because computers just wouldn't have this kind of memory. To put this into perspective again, in 2011 London had London riots, so people were heavily looking for riot suspects. The super recognizers managed to recognize the third of 4,000 suspects, and this is after reviewing 200,000 hours of the footage. Mainly the computers failed here and only recognized one suspect because of the grainy footage, but again it just goes to show technology can be faulty and how useful these people can be to the police. Now if you're looking at this and you're like, oh man, I can't recognize, you know, even like my parents from their high school pictures, or just in general, if you're listening to this you're like, well, I think I'm on the other end of the spectrum, I think like I'm really bad at recognizing faces. Well, in that case you might, but this again would be super rare as if you were the super recognizer. You might be in the 2 to 2.5% of the people that have the opposite, which is developmental prosopagnosia. So that's when you are just really terrible at recognizing faces, but it's not due to like any brain damage or poor eyesight. Now, how would you test something like this? There's multiple tests, but the two that I'm going to talk about today, because they're the most commonly used. First test is called Before They Were Famous. So you might have done this probably online and at some point, even maybe without knowing it, or you might have done something similar where it was like, hey, recognize famous people's childhood pictures, and they would give you about 56 photographs of people before they were famous, but it's usually their childhood pictures. So you're either to say, well, to choose their name and to recognize who the person is, or to just be able to generally describe them. Because, you know, again, sometimes you might not remember the name, however you will be like, oh, it's that actress from that movie, kind of thing. So as long as you are able to generally describe them and be like, yeah, they appeared in XYZ, that still kind of counts as recognition. Second is the Cambridge Face Memory Test. Here you're given 6 male faces, and all of them have been given to you in like 3 different profiles. So let's say this, left, right. And now you have different tasks. So at first you're given those 6 male faces from those 3 angles that you have seen, so it starts off easy. But then you are to recognize those faces, you know, just from them as like actually walking the street, like different lighting, and then it gets harder and harder. Obviously, if you were to, let's say, pass that test with flying colors and suddenly you're like, oh my god, I can actually recognize faces pretty quickly, then they would go and actually give you different tasks. Because they're looking for you to recognize and not have perceptions about the face recognitions. So what does that mean is, again, like, people tend to try to generalize, right? So you would see one face and you would compare it to like 5 others and be like, that's the same person. So that's the trick. So afterwards, once you prove yourself to have like exceptional face recognizing skills, then they would go and move on and see, like, are you able not to discriminate between the simultaneously presented faces? So obviously, for best practice, there's a couple of ways to do it. So let's say you are to identify a suspect and you're being shown a bunch of photographs, right? Obviously, nobody should give you any insinuations. It should be in a controlled environment, and they should just give you like the photographs to look at. And then what the people should pay attention to is, well, for how long can you recognize the person? Can you recognize them on different days? Can you recognize them among other faces? So hence why lineups, for example, should be people who kind of like all of a similar height, similar looks, exactly because of that, so that there are no mistakes made. And I find this one really funny because, like, when you think about it, it's so logical, but usually it's easier but also more reliable for you to recognize averaged images of a standard face shape. What does that mean? If you were to see me in town now after watching this YouTube video, you will most probably recognize me better than if you were to just see my passport picture and be like, eh. Because again, there's something that's more reliable when seeing averaged images with like different shadows and everything, rather than just a standard face shape. And to reiterate again, it's really useful to have these people working for border control, for example. So like those people are kind of actually exposed to these tests, like people working for the police, let's say transport police, or just Met in general. Just because obviously what you're thinking about is trying to, well, not have the false negative, more importantly not have the false positive. So false negative would mean like negatively identifying somebody's face, which means you have let somebody pass through the cracks and you haven't actually caught the suspect or the witness or whoever. But false positive is even worse, because if you have people who can't actually recognize faces, but they are convinced that they have recognized the right one, so those people are obviously not super recognizers. They can be somebody like me who is again basing it on the perception of like what I have about how those people look like. Well, then you have a false positive, and then you have basically caught the wrong person and can lead to miscarriages of justice. Now, if you're still watching this video and you're like, I'm like really bad at this, Maja, like you don't even understand, just like find it intriguing. Well, actually Josh Davis that taught me at Greenwich University, say hi to Josh if you're still there, he is such a character. By the way, if Josh is teaching you at Greenwich still, does he still do that thing where, well, he makes people do the test, but he does it in such a way as if he's like scouting for the super recognizers, and then he's like super proud of you if you are that, and thinks that you're gonna go and do PhD in that and research for him. Yeah, Josh is such a character. Just love Josh so much. Also, he just has the best picture for this research. Like, how cool is this picture? I want this picture. Then I don't have the skills, so hey. So in his study in 2011, he has actually concluded that sometimes the prosopagnosia, or just in general not being able to recognize people as well as you can, well, can stem from the poor eyesight, can stem from other things, but it's usually social anxiety. So let's say if you are a really shy person and you have been avoiding eye contact with other people your whole life, well then in that case it can actually lead to you not being able to recognize the faces as good as other people. And that's simply because you had less practice at looking at faces and as such at recognizing those faces. And if you're intrigued more into the prosopagnosia and you think like maybe you are actually on the other end of the spectrum, kind of check if it's interesting, kind of check like how do you react to even pictures of people. If even pictures of people make you kind of uncomfortable, you can't even look at the eyes of the people in the pictures, maybe like test yourself to see if you are actually on the other end of the spectrum. There's nothing wrong with it. Just saying, like, I found that super interesting because those people with that diagnosis actually realize that even just looking at pictures, they're like, I get nothing. Now we're gonna go take a test. Well, probably a couple of tests, like they're on the Greenwich page. I'll put the link down below so you can take it with me as we are going along. One thing, if you do take a test and you score 10 and above, or just like in general you score really well, you know where to go from there. I'll again put some links below. You can obviously participate in research, you can actually contact Josh Davis and like other people at Greenwich Uni, or there are different departments, like London Met has people dedicated to just looking at CCTV footage, so they have a team of super recognizers. Scotland Yard has about, I think, 200 super recognizers. Their job is the research website, so you can just get involved in the research in general. So yeah, I gotcha. Let's put the grandma glasses on and get this test going. Okay, I think I'm gonna do 2 tests today. So one should be, could you be a super recognizer? Basically, you have like a brief one and then they pass you on if you kind of like recognize the test and you go into more detailed things. So let's see if you make it there. And then the second one I plan to take is this beat the computer and win 50 pounds. Cool. Go to test. Could you be a super recognizer? Which language do I want? English. Let's do it. Instructions. In stage 1 of each trial you will see a single face for a few seconds. In stage 2 you will see an array of faces. Your task is to try and pick out the first face from the array. Okay, so I have a couple of seconds to remember this guy's face. Cool. And now I need to pick the guy. God, you're gonna fucking see me fail. You don't have to copy my answers, right? Okay, shit. What am I looking for? You see, so this is what I meant, like they're kind of using different angles. Okay, let's remember you, dude. That hair, right? The hair is what I'm looking at. Okay, cool. Now again, the hair is the thing, but you should also pay attention to other features because it's not just about the hair. It's here. I still think it's 6. Okay, am I just going for 6 everywhere? Oh god, okay, I'm definitely failing with this one. Oh, there are gonna be a lot of beanies now. Again, you see, you shouldn't be paying attention to like the beanies, you should be paying attention to the face because this is how they trick you now. I so don't know that I had them all mixed up now. Okay, now it's getting tough for me, okay. Okay, jawbone, like jawline. Watch the jawline. Come on, Maya, you have just watched the jawline for like 10 seconds. It's this guy, right? Has the most enunciated jawline. It's my mind it is. Okay, he has different forehead. God, these people are gonna hate me if they watch this. Ears is what you should have been looking for, not forehead, idiot. Okay, I think I got it. That's the first thing I landed. I'm not even looking at other faces. You all look so similar. This is 11 out of 14. Failing this miserably. Yes it is. Oh my god. Okay, don't focus on the glasses. Lips, ear, hair. Why'd you remove his glasses? Okay, Maya, were we focusing lips, here, here. Come on, do it. They can't all be 6. They can't all be number 6. Okay, droopy eyes. Droopy eyes. Oh man, they're gonna twist you and turn you around, aren't they? Look at this. Yep, they have done that. Okay, what is it? Did I fail? Oh, I have passed to the next level, right? Oh, you can skip the test and do your scores. Okay, let's do the other 5-minute one. Okay, let's go, let's go. Please rate images for similarity, not all similar, highly similar. No, but I still wouldn't. Look at the lips, look at the eyes. I still wouldn't say this is the same person if I was to see a sketch. I mean, pretty much he might have had a haircut. Yeah, I would say this is highly similar. What the hell is this? What the hell is this? Even though most of her face is covered by that hair? This is eerie. Okay, this is not similar, I don't know what it is. Oh god, you see, if I show some bias here, I'm sorry, it's alright. But yeah, even the Adam's apple, no. I don't know why, but the Adam's apple, it just works for me every time. Maybe, you know, just put them here and then like, they'll probably deceive me 10 times. The lips and nose don't match here though. And I mean, this is covered by hair, but the cheekbones are not. I'm like failing on live television. Just imagine if I failed every single one. I mean, even I can have like, I have no lips, but like even I can make that and have like even more 0 lips. But what if they were beat, let's say, yeah, what if they had some bruise or something? 35 out of 50, okay, I mean that's not great, but that's not bad either, wow, okay, cool. Oh, okay, so now it gives me, remember the results for the first test? It said you scored 10 out of 14. If you scored about 10, you might be super active, just there. If I scored 11, but no, your homegirl scored 10. However, no test on its own is diagnostic. And you see, this study involved the Cambridge face memory test that we spoke about, 30/60 face recognition test, Glasgow face matching test, so they're like different tests again. Maja from the future here. I'm not gonna include everything, like it took me about an hour because I just couldn't stop myself from being tested. I planned to do 2 tests, but then I was like, hey, do you want to do further? So I've done the Glasgow, I've done the 30/60. 30/60 is the hardest one, so let's just comment on some of the results. I failed miserably. So I scored 10 out of 14 on the grid test, apparently about 55.09 scored 10 and above. So again, that's like the best score that I've done. Then it went to shits. The CFMT test, I scored 51 out of 102, I did great. The Glasgow matching one, I scored 28 out of 40. And then the 30/60 is just the hardest thing. I actually think this is fake, because that's the thing with me. I scored 38 out of 60. So you have about 10 seconds to memorize each of 30 faces. That's why it's called 30/60. The hardest fucking thing. The hardest. And because later you're given the option to choose, is it a new face, is it a face that wasn't part of the research, or is it an old one? And I was leaning to choose mostly new faces because I'm like, I don't want to accuse somebody falsely. That was my whole thing during this whole process. So yeah. And another thing, if you noticed, again, why I was probably failing miserably at all parts is because I would fixate on one face. So like as soon as the screen would change, I would fixate on like one person on the screen. I would be like, yeah, that must be it, like without even actually looking individually into every person. I mean, it just goes to show that these super recognizers, well, should be acknowledged, but also how useful it is. Because you don't want a false negative, you don't want what I was doing, which is just like choosing random faces, being like, yeah, I think this is the person. Because, well, then you have false person behind bars, and as you know, I am really against miscarriages of justice, so kudos to you, super recognizers. You're doing God's missions out there. And that's about it for this video. Let me know what other topics criminology related you want me to cover in the future episodes. Let me know what you guys scored. Did you discover something? Did you learn something during this? Did you discover you're like super recognizer and you're like, thank you, Ma, I'm gonna go work for the police now? No problem. Who does that? Nobody. I'm gonna escort myself out of this video and have a great day. Happy Wednesday, push through this week, push through it. You can do it, I believe in you. But now, there's nothing else to tell you, nothing else to say. So this is goodbye. Bye.